Today we're talking about how to properly ground your aircraft when you are fueling it. It's not at all what you've been doing. We're going to show you exactly why that is. All right, so a big airplane myth out there right now that you can actually pull up to the fuel pump and just clip on that little grounding wire right to your exhaust. A, terrible place to do it because you can damage your exhaust. B, there's no continuity between this exhaust and this fuel cap here. What does that mean in fancy, or well, less fancy terms actually? That means when you are trying to take the electrical charge from here, dissipate the electrical charge across the aircraft into the ground via that grounding wire so that when you touch your fuel nozzle, here you won't get a spark. Well, guess what? What you're doing is not accomplishing that. There's no electrical contact between here and the exhaust. And we're going to show you with this fancy little device here. So how this little device works, when you touch two wires together, you get a beep. That means there's conduction or continuity in the circuit. Now, if I touch these two wires together, yeah, I get a beep. If I touch them together, say on our fuel cap here, on either side of the fuel cap, the wires aren't touching, but just by touching the fuel cap, I get a beep because the electrical current passes through the fuel cap. Let's go ahead and test some other places on our airplane here. Specifically, we want to know about our exhaust hanging out down here. So the exhaust should be connected to the engine. The engine should be grounded to the firewall and grounded to the airframe. So is there any conduction between the exhaust and anywhere else in the airframe? No. What about our nose gear fork? Well, the nose gear fork and this screw going into the airframe, there's conduction there, but there's nothing, there's no continuity between the exhaust and the airframe. No continuity between the exhaust and the nose gear fork. So your exhaust now, if it was actually plain, nice, shiny metal, maybe it would, maybe it wouldn't, but the exhaust is not a great grounding place. A, you'll damage your exhaust by clipping on that grounding wire to it. B, obviously there's not good conduction there. So what would be a better option? Well, what if we went ahead and said, I want to make sure that I get a good ground from where I'm gonna be touching that fuel nozzle to where the spark's gonna occur and then ignite all the fuel and blow this wing up in my face. Again, all those fuel vapors in there, you put a spark to it, you can bet not just on a fire, but a very big explosion, really bad day. Really important to always ground the aircraft before fueling. So what could we do? Well, we want to make sure that fuel nozzle is grounded one way. If there is no grounding wire at the place you're fueling, you can, with the fuel cap closed when there's no fumes around, touch the fuel nozzle just before coming in to actually fill it, touch it somewhere else that is going to give you grounding. That would cause the spark to occur then and hopefully not a few seconds later when you start fueling. That's one way to do it. The best way is use the grounding wire at the fuel pump. So let's go ahead and check out our continuity between, say, well, the fuel lip here and our tie down ring. So we've got the lip on our fuel cap there. We've got our tie down or our jacking point. There's continuity there, our tie down ring, continuity there. What if we touch the paint around that? Well, there's no continuity if it's painted, all right? You have to be on bare metal to get a good actual grounding point. What about here, this bare metal screw that's nice and corroded? Well, it might be so corroded there's no conduction between the 2 points. So where's a good place to clip that grounding wire? Well, a really good place would be that tie down ring there. Now let's go ahead and check out a few other spots. We're going to use our jumper cables to kind of extend these wires because they're rather short. Obviously, these jumper wires don't have much in the way of resistance, so we're gonna go ahead and switch this over to ohms. That's going to measure the amount of resistance in a wire for us. When we touch these two wires together, we read 0 ohms, no resistance, all right? Let's go ahead and measure the resistance in our jumper cables to see if there really is any. There obviously should be none, so we'll go ahead between the black and see if there's any resistance in there. And we're reading with these big heavy cables that we have 0 ohms, so that's perfect. So we get our buzzer when we touch those two together. So we're going to use that as an extension now. So now what I can do is actually clip this on somewhere else, say like our fuel neck here, where we want to actually make sure there is a grounding point too. And then I can take the other end, this guy, and go ahead and complete the circuit. So we'll go ahead and test our tie down ring again. And we've got pretty good connection there, as long as we're on the bare metal. Looks to be about, how many ohms is it? How much resistance is there? Well, not much, 0.8. Anything below 1 ohm should be good for us. Let's go ahead and come over here towards our exhaust and check that, or anywhere around the engine. So let's see if this screw here, it actually is a good grounding point. It is, all right, there's continuity through the airframe to the actual fuel filler neck. Let's see about the exhaust. Yes, the bare metal exhaust there is. What about the exhaust pipe down here? Not at all. What if I really scratch it and try to get some bare metal there? Nothing, all right. Now how about our gear? Landing gear is great. How many ohms is the landing gear if we were to clip it on here to our nose wheel? 0, no resistance whatsoever, great grounding point. So our tie-down rings, the landing gear here, great grounding point. Anything on the airframe, and of course, the closer you can put that grounding strap, the less distance the electrical current would have to flow through to the fuel filler neck. That's where you'd really want it to be. That will give you the best grounding point possible, the least chance of having a spark. And again, if there's any doubt in your mind that you might actually or might accidentally have a spark because you have no grounding wire, or the grounding wire looks really beat up on the ground, you're not sure if that's actually gonna give you a good connection, well, you can always touch that actual fuel filler neck, the actual fuel nozzle, to somewhere on the airplane first, and then if there was going to be a spark, it would occur then. Hopefully as you move it over just a few seconds later, there wouldn't be one. So that is one way, if you don't have a grounding wire, to go ahead and touch it somewhere you know is grounded on the airframe, besides obviously the fuel filler neck, because you don't wanna cause a spark, but something around there, like the tie down, if the paint is scraped off of it, or somewhere like the jacking point, part of the exhaust system that is shiny and has good conductivity for us, right? So this part does, this rusty part, not so much. Anything that's painted definitely will not. Bare metal only is going to conduct electricity well. So that is where you'd want to put it. Putting it down here on the exhaust doesn't really do anything for us. Inside the exhaust, nothing, all right. On the strut, yeah, it seems to work since there's no paint on there, but putting it on the exhaust, bad because it damages the exhaust, bad because it's not actually grounding out the airplane like you wanted to. You could still get that big boom, even though you thought you did everything right. Let's go ahead and grind this down a little bit and see what it would take to get a good connection at our exhaust pipe there. This should cure all our problems. Still, fairly high resistance, not enough to actually get the beep. There's the beep because it's very low resistance. This, although it is giving you something, it's 177 ohms, 176, really high resistance, okay? So the takeaway from this video really is exhaust, not a great place. Not only does it damage the exhaust, it also does not really serve the purpose it's intended for. Whenever in doubt, always touch that fuel filler nozzle to the airframe where you know it's going to be grounded, like your tie-down ring, before actually pulling the cap off and touching it in there to avoid any chance of a spark. That would be really bad. And if you have any questions on this, well, you guys know what to do. Leave it in the comments right below. Try to think about where on your aircraft would be a good grounding point for you personally, for the airplane you're flying. Something like anywhere there's bare metal or that tie-down ring there. Possibly on the landing gear, maybe on that tire, on that axle nut. But if you really want to know for sure, you should be testing this with a digital volt ohm meter, a DVOM. Easily available at your local hardware store like Home Depot. This one's from Klein Tools, about 40 bucks. Pretty simple. So that's it for this video, guys. If you have any questions, like we said, leave it in the comments below. Be safe. Make sure your airplane is properly grounded always before fueling. And if you cannot fly every day, fly at MikeAlpha.com. We'll see you guys in the next one.